Okay. Welcome to the Ask the Counselor show. I am here today with my special guest, Trunnis Goggins II. Hi, Trunnis. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm good. We are going to talk about Trunnis' book and what he's been doing and all of that good stuff. And we're going to also talk about grief. Okay, because that is one of the topics, and he's actually coming out with a new book, but I don't want to jump too far ahead. So why don't we start at the beginning? Your book, Stories of Children, features deeply personal accounts from parenting, navigating unimaginable grief, right?
Right.
How do you believe sharing these stories contribute to the conversation around mental health and healing?
When I lost my daughter, I lost my daughter back in 2015 to a homicide in Indianapolis, Indiana. And when I lost her, it was actually 18 months after I lost my dad, my father, Trunnis, the owner of Skateland back there in Buffalo. And when I lost my father, it was sad, but it was natural. It was a part of the order. I knew, as years go by, you're going to lose your parents one day. It's a shame to say, but you are. I mean, it's just because of the progression of life. Um, and I was still grieving from that. But then I lost my daughter, and that was an unnatural loss. It was way out of order. I'm telling my kids, this is what I want you to do when you bury me, and I have to bury my daughter. And as a result, that grief was very hard to handle because I'm thinking that I'm going to handle my grief exactly the way I handled my grief when I lost my parent. Okay. And it wasn't like that at all. And it led to a very, very dark time in my life.
Mhm.
It was extremely dark. A lot of depression, a lot of they were bad thoughts. They were just bad thoughts. Now with this book, when I finally got out of my darkness, and there were things that I should have done. I should have seen a professional. Like I should have gone and reached out to someone like you, and I did not do that. But when I finally got out of my darkness, I talked to another individual. I was introduced to someone who actually lost their child, and they lost their child to suicide. And when I went to talk to them, I realized that there was something that was, um, that was needed, where there was comfort in talking to other individuals. And it does lead to, and even in the book itself, at the back of the book, there are resources for people to do exactly what I said. We should have reached out to someone like you, Vondolyn, and that's what this book's all about. Even the writing process itself helped in the healing process of that grief.
Yeah. In the four P's of you, you explore passion, perspective, purpose, and plan, right? And how can individuals use these principles to protect and strengthen their mental health, especially in the face of personal tragedy?
Yeah, that is something that when you let's start from this way. I'm a business professor. I teach business, and I teach strategic planning and things like that. And I always talk about, you need to have a foundation, and you need to have a strategic plan. You need to have your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. When I wrote this book, this is a strategic plan, so to speak, for the individual. Number one, you got to have a purpose. What are you doing? And when you start and you think about what you are doing, even in the face of grief, in the face of depression, in the face of being overwhelmed, when you realize who you are and what you're here to do, and you have that purpose, that provides that foundation, and that helps you mentally. It helps you get grounded. It helps you, have a perspective on life that you need to have. And once you have that, then you plan, and you have to have passion. I wrote something in the book about somebody that I taught in a class one time who, she wanted to be a nurse. And I said, why do you want to be a nurse? And she said, because my mother was a nurse. I said, let me ask you again, why do you want to be a nurse? She goes, because my grandmother's a nurse. I said, I'm going to ask you a third time, why do you want to be a nurse? And she was quiet because she knew that I was trying to get somewhere. And she goes, I really want to be a teacher. I said, then why are you going to be a nurse? She went and changed, and I'm going to say this, she probably would have been a great nurse, but her passion was being a school teacher. That individual is still a school teacher, by the way, and she's doing a great job. Now, I will tell you right now that, I love teaching college, but an elementary school teacher, you got to have a certain level of passion to do something like that. That's for sure. And
Yeah,
then the next thing is being persistent, knowing that, things are going to happen. And there are going to be bad things. And the more you love something, if you don't have a passion for something and bad things happen, you drop out real fast. And
yeah,
again, and that again, once you know who you are, that really helps with your mental perspective for sure.
absolutely.
Mhm.
So, when we talk about grief, right, especially the loss of a child, it's so often is an isolating experience, right?
Mhm. It is.
What resources and encouragement do your books offer to those who may be suffering in silence? I know you kind
Well,
of touched on that a little bit already, but um, um, just just give me some examples that
well,
you.
we do have the resources in the back of the book that you can reach out to, and these are professional resources, obviously. I just want you to know also that you have 9 people that wrote in that book, and all those 9 people, and myself included, you can reach out to. Since the book has come out, I've had people from all over the world send me emails, reach me on Facebook and this, that, and the other, wanting to talk about the loss of their child. And you know what? I am more than happy to take time, and I will drop what I'm doing to make sure I talk to people. It's a really bad time, and you feel isolated
Yeah.
because no one else understands. I'll never forget my mother. Um, right, I was sitting in the car getting ready to go, literally plan for my daughter's funeral. And my mother told me just straight up, and that was the most honest thing I've ever heard her say. She goes, I can't help you with this. I don't know how to help you with this. And I said, I know you don't. And the thing is the only people that can help you through this grief are people who have that. And I don't want to say this to downplay, because you do need professional counseling, but the only people that know how to help you through this grief are the people who are going through that process,
Yeah. Or
and
have
it's
went through
it's
that process. Yes, because
yeah.
a lot of times, even in my professional practice, I lost my mother, right, to
Hmm.
COVID. And she was vibrant, she was beautiful, she was, just she was the matriarch of our family. Her and my dad had been together over 50 something years, high school sweethearts, and then COVID hit and she actually beat it. She was on the ventilator. And then um, in her rehabbing, she ended up having a heart attack and passed away
Mm,
unexpectedly because we thought she was coming home. We was preparing for her to come home.
right.
But it was devastating. So a lot of times, in my counseling, and people, whether they lose a child or a husband or a parent, I can relate and empathize with them, what that feels like. You know what I mean? And it is a very, very at times isolating, when you feel isolated, you feel
Right.
like nobody else understands. But, a lot of times, like I said, once I share some of the things in my life in regards to losing my mother and my grandmothers, just like you, people get older and you expect that. But my
Right.
mother, to me, had a whole bunch more life to live. So that was
Exactly.
unexpected. So,
Right.
they can appreciate, me kind of helping them through that, and me kind of being honest and real and letting them see that, hey, this happened to me. I lost someone that was very close and I loved, you know. So I do know the hurt and the pain that you're going through.
Right.
Why don't we take a quick break, and we'll be back with Trunnis Goggins, and we're going to continue to talk about his book, and we're going to continue to talk about grief. So we'll be right back, folks. Welcome back to the Ask the Counselor show. I'm Counselormsvee, Vondolyn Salter Lane, and I am here today with my special guest, Trunnis Goggins II. So, Trunnis, we left off talking about your book, The 4 Ps. We left off talking about grief and how you lost your daughter. And so I just want to ask you, why do you think it's so important for communities and even media platforms to be more open and addressing mental health, particularly around grief, trauma, and identity?
This is extremely important. It's funny, if I went and told you right now that I had cancer, I say I don't. But if I told you right now I have cancer, you would sit there and you would sympathize. You would try to find ways to get me help. You would try to find ways to get me to recover, because it's a physical element. If you saw me right now walking with crutches because I had a broken leg or something, you would say something to me. You would try to offer me help and try to offer assistance in any way you can. Mental health, I have come to realize through my experience, is totally different. You are once I if I sat there and said, "Hey, I'm suffering trauma and I am depressed because of whatever reason, or I am thinking horrible thoughts because of what happened to me." A couple things you're going to say, all right? And this is just the way we're set up. Get over it. Hope you do well, and that's it. I wish I could say something to you. All right. This is what happens with mental health. If you look at a lot of our really horrible tragedies that happen, these things that, like, oh my gosh, that's unimaginable. People doing just unimaginable things. If you go back to it, it could have been stopped if you would have talked to that individual. Because when someone suffers trauma, sometimes what they do is they're not in their right mind, and it affects entire communities. Also, when someone's going through, I know that my work performance for a long period of time, I didn't feel like working. Okay, so now my work performance is subpar. Okay, the way I'm interacting with people is now subpar. All right, I didn't lose my job, but I lose my job. Now I'm a burden economically, because now I'm collecting unemployment. I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and the other. Or, you know what? I have trauma, and now instead of, if somebody's telling me to get over it, you know how I'm going to get over it? I'm going to get over it with some Jack Daniels or some Chevette Regal or something like that. That's how I'm going to get over it. Then I go out in the car and I kill somebody. Okay. Which just happened where I live here in Asheville, North Carolina. We had a situation where somebody was drunk, and this person, the person who killed the person who was drunk just now, was mourning the loss of someone in their family that got killed by a drunk driver.
Right, right.
Okay, so it's a chain reaction. So it is important that we on social media, if you see something on social media and somebody's sitting there saying something that's out of the norm, reach out to that individual. We would reach out if somebody's wearing comes in with a brand new car or something like that. We make comments on social media about that. Somebody gets a brand new job, we make comments on that. Someone does something stupid on social media for whatever reason, we make comments. When someone makes a political statement on social media, we make comments. But when someone says, "I'm hurting," if you look at it, if you look at the likes and the dislikes and stuff like that, you just see like little hands, little praying hands, like praying for you. You don't get anything else, right? No interaction. So you need to do that. I think that we need to be proactive. When mental illness is the same as physical illness, but worse. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it needs to be treated. And we need to look at that. And with proper treatment, with proper care, we can heal that individual. And so and just like anything else, if you have a situation where there's a physical illness, you were just talking about, unfortunately, you were talking about COVID. Look how many millions of people died from COVID because that person had COVID and he interacted or she interacted with someone else in the in the community that had COVID, then that person gets COVID. And the thing is there are people that get this illness that can't handle it the way other people can handle it. I've had COVID 4 times. All right. Not a problem. But the thing is, I don't have the problem with it, but I'm taking that problem and I'm spreading it to other individuals. And see, and that's what happens with mental illness. I'm not saying that the illness itself spreads, but the consequences and some of the symptoms do carry over. That's why it's very important that we treat mental illness seriously and don't just tell people to get over it, because maybe they can't just get over
Yeah, I totally agree. They can't get over it,
it.
not without help, not without support, not without, sometimes you do need professional help,
Mhm.
but support from the community, support from your church, support from your friends, and I always tell people grief has no time limit.
That's right.
It's like this will be the 5th year that my mother has left us, right? But it still stings just like it was yesterday, right?
Right.
Especially around her birthday, holidays, um, and even I know like around the time that she passed, like was in May. So that around May, I start feeling, I start feeling it in my body because you carry stress and anxiety, depression in your body physically, just as well as mentally. It's such a stigma when you say that people are getting a little bit better now when you say mental health, because now
Right.
since this, the media has picked it up and, they've really like been showcasing and help, trying to help people with mental health. But mental health is real and it's nothing to be ashamed about.
No.
It has no barriers. It doesn't matter if you're white, doesn't matter if you're black, doesn't matter if you're rich, doesn't matter if you're poor. It just has no barriers. And it hits children just as well as it hits adults, just as well as it hits our seniors. So, and people use different things to get over it. Like you said, they may pick up alcohol, they may pick up a drug or may pick up alcohol, they may even start using sex or something else, you know what I mean, to just try to null that feeling, right?
Absolutely.
So, so it's out there. So, if anybody, if you need, or if you, and it's not just grief, right? You know yourself. If something is off, you're not sleeping, certain things you're feeling down, feeling hopeless, or you're getting real fidgety, and that's not the norm for you, then talk to somebody, talk to a professional, get an assessment, and see what's going on. Because we live
Absolutely.
in a world that, we have life stuff that happens. Yeah, divorce, loss of job, um, even getting older,
Yeah,
change of life, life
exactly.
transitions, all of the above, all of that affects your mental health.
It does. It does. It does. Getting older, at 54, I'm trying not to help. I'm trying not to get it to affect it, but it does sometimes, especially when you see somebody, I try to stay active. And when you realize you can't take the steps that you used to take, it does play on you for a little bit. I admit, when you said that, I thought about it. I was like, yeah, it kind of does. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But so like you said, sometimes it affects other people more than it affects you, and vice versa. You know, you may be able to deal with it, and you may be able to kind of move through it, and then somebody else may not be able to, you know.
Absolutely, you're right.
So, people, if you know someone that needs someone or think that they need additional help, talk to them, ask them, refer them. It's okay to say, "Hey, are you okay?"
Right.
It's okay to say, "No, I'm not."
Exactly.
But it's not okay to just try to continue on like nothing is wrong, you know.
That is right.
Yeah, like nothing is wrong. So I'm going to ask you a couple of more questions, and then we'll get into more to your book, because I want the people to kind of know what's happening in the future for you. So what message do you want our viewers to take away by reading the stories of children's loss and the 4 Ps of you, especially when comes to finding hope and support through mental health
Well,
challenges?
for the 4 Ps of you, what I want them to get out of the 4 Ps of you is I want them to be able to use that as a foundation of thought. I want, individuals to, again, like I said, know who you are. And who you are today may not be who you are tomorrow. All right. And always constantly, if you're reinventing yourself and things like that, do that. I know, like, even right now, I'm a college educator. Before I was a college educator, I was in the United States military. Now, as now I'm an author and a speaker and all those other things. And just next year, I'm going to ride my bike literally all the way across the country of Australia. That's a whole new purpose, right? A whole new thing that I'm doing, and I'm raising money and I'm raising funds for stroke victims. But so those are things. So my purpose, purpose changes in a way. I mean, there's still what you want to do and stuff like that, but that is what I want you to get out of that. Those 4 Ps, if you live by those 4 Ps, you're going to be fine. That's purpose, planning, passion, and persistence. And if you do that, you can almost do whatever you set your mind to. I say almost because there's certain things, you're not going to, but that's what I said. Now, as far as the stories of book, that again, that's grief. How to, these are other authors. It's not just me in the book, but there are other authors in there that have contributed to this book to show what they've gone through, and not only what they've gone through as far as the grieving process, but what they've done to allow their child's life and legacy to live on. Like me, I'm the money that I make from this book, a lot of the money that I make from the book Children's Lost goes to scholarships for people who've lost their parent. Right now I'm raising my grandson, my daughter's son. I raise him down here in North Carolina, and granted, I do have the means to make sure that he goes to college and I don't have to worry about that. I just hope he goes to a state college because it's expensive. But you know, but on the same note, there are other individuals out there that lose their parent and they're not able to go to college.
Right.
Life is kind of lost. So I want to make sure that there's something out there, there's some means, there's some resources out there to help them. And that's what I'm doing. So my daughter's name, it's called the Kayla Goggins Memorial Scholarship. My daughter's name will live on forever, even past me. And those are things that I'm trying to do to make sure that my daughter's legacy lives on. And there are other things. There's another person that wrote a story in that book about legacy living on. She lost her son to a heart attack. He was playing basketball, had a heart attack, and there was no defibrillator where they were. And because of that, he died. So what she did was she started Michael's Miracle, where now if you go to anywhere in California, anywhere in the Chicagoland area where he did pass away, there are defibrillators in gymnasiums and swimming pools and things like that. And I don't want to say it's funny, it is a miracle. The first person that this defibrillator program saved was a kid in Napa Valley, California, by the name of Michael.
Oh, wow.
And so it's just stories like that, and it's stories to help, you cope. I mean, unfortunately, with our society now, drugs, alcohol, gang violence, gun violence, and what have you, there are too many parents losing their kids.
Yeah.
Way too many parents losing their kids I lost my daughter to a senseless killing. She was breaking up a fight. That's why she died. And so, this is a book that, unfortunately it's necessary for people to cope because, like I said in the very beginning, this is an unnatural feeling. So
Yeah.
this is why the book is out. Mhm.
So I want you to tell the people where they can buy the 4Ps.
Mhm. You
So,
can buy it at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere where you buy books. I do know that there are links. I do partner with non-for-profits and other organizations where you can buy the book on their links that you're associated with. A matter of fact, I will be in Buffalo in May for two events. I'll be at May 22nd, and then May 24th, I will be at the Barnes and Noble on Transit Road in Clarence Center, doing a book signing there.
that's wonderful, wonderful. So I want to, and do you want to give people your email address and so that if they
Yes,
want to get in touch with you, I'm going to also leave that stuff in the credits as well. So
absolutely.
yeah, why don't you give them that so
Yes.
they can get in touch with you?
My email, see, I spend all my concentration writing, so my email is easy. It's Trunnis at TrunnisGoggins2.com.
Okay.
And that's it. Trunnis at TrunnisGoggins2.com.
Okay,
Thank
sounds
you.
good. I want to thank you, Trunnis, for coming on the Ask the Counselor show. You have been a delight. And I look forward to seeing you in May
Yes,
at the
absolutely.
two book signings.
Mhm.
And if anybody, like I said, is having or struggling with grief or even mental health, contact somebody. I am a licensed mental health counselor, licensed through New York State. But even if you don't want, to contact me, contact somebody. It's so many professionals out there that can help you get through whatever you're going through. Okay. So, you're not in this alone. So thank you again, Trunnis. Thank you
Thank
everybody
you.
for tuning in to the Ask the Counselor show. I'm Counselor Ms. V, Vondolyn Salter Lane, and I will see you next time. Thanks.